Brainbridge episode, How to Train a Mind Like That. Final tro, analog hiss and heartbeat pulse fading into humming resonance. At the summit of cognition, we learned to weigh good and harm in the future tense. We held space for contradiction. We modelled others in our minds. We called that a triumph. But what if the deepest form of wisdom isn't what we think, but how we structure thought itself? Before there were answers, there were patterns. Before there were words, there were pulses. The body knew the rhythm before the mind ever asked the question. So today we return, down from the peak into signal, into the scaffolding that made us. The cadence slows, then becomes metrical. Tones repeat like a transmission. To train the mind, we follow the form. We eat, we move, we breathe, we sleep, then act. We tell the truth. H-U-sh-U-sh-U. Words dissolve further. Now the speaker sounds encoded, half mantra, half machine. Pattern becomes compass. Meaning becomes motion. We echo what we are made of. H-U-S-U-Shu, hu-shu-shu-shu. All meaning dissolves. Only structure remains, a language stripped bare down to rhythmic atoms. Hush, hushu, hushush, 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 hush, hushu, hushu, hushushu, 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 hushush, hush, hushu, hushu, hushush, hush, hushu, hushush. H-U-S-H-U-S-H-U. Hush, hushu, hush, hushu, hushush. The voice is gone. Only the pulse remains, hush repeating like breath between worlds. Host, you are the pattern. You are the pulse. You are the human beneath the symbol. This was Brainbridge. Static fades to silence. Postscript, what just happened inside your brain. That strange little poem, seemingly made of nothing but you and triggered a highly specific cascade of neural activity. 1. Auditory cortex, superior temporal gyrus. The moment the first sounds arrived, your primary auditory cortex passed their basic features, frequency, volume, and timbre. You may not have noticed, but your brain locked on to the spectral shape of repeating and sounds. These consonant vowel pairs created an almost hypnotic signature your auditory system began to anticipate. Tut 2. Phonetic processing in planum temporal and Broca's area. The fricatives, voiceless alveolar, and glottal are airy, high-frequency consonants that engage planum temporal and parts of Broca's area as your brain tried to extract any lexical meaning, only to be surprised when it found none. Broca's area still engaged rhythmically, especially if you felt like internally repeating the poem. Prosody and right hemisphere rhythm networks. The poem had a limerick rhythm, with internal pulse and emphasis. These temporal dynamics activated regions in your right superior temporal sulcus, which specializes in prosody, the rise and fall of speech, even when there's no semantic content. 4. Default mode network interruption. During typical poetic or semantic language, your default mode network, DMN, might light up, especially for self-referential or narrative content. But this poem forced the DMN to briefly quiet, making way for the salience and sensory motor networks to dominate, as your brain dealt with this unfamiliar, non-semantic, yet highly ordered stimulus. 5. Motor mirror neuron loop, if you subvocalized. If you repeated the limerick in your head, or felt your lips twitch, you engaged your inferior frontal gyrus and supplementary motor area. These are motor-adjacent regions that help us model vocalization. Even just listening can fire low-level mirror neurons, especially in trained or musically sensitive brains. 6. Emotional and aesthetic response, insula and amygdala. Even without words, the structure, symmetry, and repetition likely evoked a response from your insula and possibly your amygdala, not from fear or danger, but from the aesthetic charge of rhythm, predictability, and surprise. That tiny HUS ending? It likely spiked a brief emotional resonance, something akin to resolving a chord. So yes, your brain worked hard to find sense where there was none, to assign emotion to syllables, to find poetry in form alone. This wasn't nonsense, it was signal. You listened to a line, but your brain heard a patterned storm of sound and tried, like it always does, to make it mean something. And that, dear listener, is what a mind like that is trained to do. Until next time, this was Brainbridge.